So I've been wanting to create an in-depth video with like a lot of links and sources and references, but I think considering now that we have just bombed Iran, that it's better if I just post my thoughts completely and unfiltered, and I'll try and make it as succinct as possible. Um, but it really does not surprise me at this point that we have bombed Iran. Um, I think that this has been a multi-decade plan for Netanyahu and his uh, previous prime ministers that came before him, including the one that Netanyahu had assassinated. Mossad and Israel have worked overtime nonstop for the last 25 years, including conspiring with Saudi Arabia to commit 9/11. And if you don't believe that at this point, you're hopeless. We have toppled several regimes. We toppled Gaddafi. We supported the Arab Spring, which led to a regime change in Egypt and Libya with Gaddafi. We took out Saddam Hussein, who very prophetically said that essentially if he falls, then there would be chaos that ensues afterwards, and not that he was a good person by any stretch of the imagination, but we traded one evil for essentially a supposedly lesser evil, and 2 million Iraqi lives and probably many more Arab lives in the Middle East, and many thousands upon thousands of American lives have been lost, all because Maestro Netanyahu wanted to stay in power, even after his government has tried to impeach him several times. And I said, after the October 7th attacks, I said, they're going to level Gaza now. And I said, there's no way that Mossad and the CIA didn't see October 7th happening. This was a multi-year plan, really a multi-decade plan, to secure Israel's place in the Middle East, or get rid of all of their quote-unquote enemies, which I guess they were enemies because, Israel is hated by several Arab countries and Middle Eastern countries. I think going forward, what we're about to see is that one of two ways. The first one is very unlikely, and Iran will just say, okay, we give up. We're not going to do anything. Highly doubt that. We toppled we toppled the Shah, got rid of him, and then have now tried to. I'm sure what they're going to do is kill Khamenei, Ayatollah Khamenei, and there's going to be a huge power vacuum if he is killed, and they will install a new Shah. And if that doesn't happen, the second part, like I said, would be Iran just launches their hypersonic missiles, which we've been claiming or seeing on social media that, it's a dwindling supply, they're not attacking, they can't launch any attacks. I think they suspected that this attack would happen, and they have been saving their weapons and probably most of their hypersonic weapons that they've been developing for multiple years now with the help of Russia, and probably some of the guidance from China. And now with Pakistan, the ISI and possibly even the FSB supplying them with intelligence, will now use their hypersonic weapons to attack U.S. naval ships in the Mediterranean and in the Gulf. That is more than likely what is going to happen now. And they will attack U.S. interests. They'll probably attack, the base in Qatar. They'll probably attack the air base in Saudi Arabia. They'll probably attack our bases in Kuwait. And I mean, this isn't. When we fought the Gulf War, it's when we first unveiled our stealth technology, the F-117. And Saddam was and his regime were woefully unprepared for what was going to happen after they invaded Kuwait, and this was in an era before we had the internet as it is today, with everyone having access to it, before we had hypersonics, before we really had hyperglide vehicles and MARVs and MIRVs. And a lot of our anti-air missiles, like the THAAD, which we've only produced 900 to 1,000 THAAD missiles to date since its inception. They are very expensive. We're not going to be able to intercept every Iranian hypersonic missile, and they've proved now that they do have them, and they are very capable weapons, and we've just now endangered the lives of thousands upon thousands of American soldiers. And probably, if it decides to, and it probably will, because Pakistan knows they will be next, they will probably enter the war and support Iran in this war against the U.S. and its NATO allies if NATO decides to join, which it probably will. And the war will just escalate and escalate, and Putin will probably see that as an opportunity to press the offensive in Ukraine. Because Ukraine is a major exporter of grains, which is extremely important, especially in war. Food and most resources like oil are important in the war. I would be very shocked if China didn't get involved in some way. It is probably very likely that they will get involved, although they probably won't get fully involved in this conflict, and neither will Russia, even though they probably want to. China is probably waiting for 2026, 2027, when a window opens for them to try and re-annex or take back Taiwan, because they want those chips. Especially, they can't, China knows that they can't fall behind in this AI arms race. The world stage has been set, especially since Israel launched its preemptive strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities early on. The world stage has been set for World War, and World War III probably won't happen in 2025, but it will probably happen at some point in 2026 or 2027. I'd be shocked if China didn't join the war, if Pakistan joins, because Iran is a major exporter of oil, and Iran is just a little bit to the west. It's the start of Asia, essentially. And while, there would be no expeditionary force that goes through the west, especially if you go to war with China, I would imagine that China has a vested interest in Iran and their oil, especially, which is very important for war. It is the whole reason that Japan decided to start expanding into the South Pacific, and supposedly the reason they attacked Pearl Harbor, because they wanted to launch a preemptive strike and ensure they could expand into the South Pacific unchallenged, if my history serves me correctly. And while they could supposedly get oil and gas from Russia, they have clearly been severely strained and have to fight a war on their own front, which I doubt Putin will ever want to give up. Not as long as he's alive. I think this was irresponsible, and clearly the U.S. pulled Iran into a lull by, saying they would hold off for 2 weeks. I'd be shocked if Iran didn't see it that way. I didn't. But who knows? I think it's really concerning, and it's very clear that Netanyahu and Mossad have blackmailed most of our politicians. They pay them, and then they blackmail them, and they say, look, you can take this money and everything can be kosher, or you can not take this money and not support us, and then we blackmail you and release this footage of you sleeping with minors, which is probably what happened to Trump. This has clearly been something that's been in the works for, like I said, 2-3 decades at this point. And who knows? We're entering a new era of war and instability. And I suggest you go fill up on gas right now, because I guarantee you it's going to get very expensive. But those are my thoughts. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for watching.